I met people who were very poor. Sometimes they are the kindest people ever. Sometimes when people have a lot, they can choose not to want to help you, even if it's well within their capacity.
Welcome to the One Day at a Time podcast, where we take things one day at a time. Today in the studio, we have with us Ming Min. Can you do a quick self-introduction?
In my day job, I am a teacher in a secondary school. And doing a couple of things in my life. Primarily in terms of hobbies, I'm doing some aerial things and yoga things.
Okay, so today we're here to, I guess, have a little chat about your experiences traveling solo as a female to many places in the world, and share about your some of the lessons you've learned maybe and the journey that you've been on traveling solo. So maybe we can start off with what are some of the places that you have been? Yeah.
Well, actually, I've been to many places except the South American continent. So some places would include the nearby countries, Indonesia, Vietnam, Thailand, of course. And then one of my very first long trip I did from south of China, Yunnan, all the way to North China, Beijing, and then going through Mongolia, and then through the east to the west of Russia. Been to the Norwegian region as well, and Sweden, quite a lot of Europe when I was studying in UK. So, yeah.
Okay, but I mean, for you, based on what I know at least, you are not the regular traveler where you go book like a hotel and then you go shopping and like in Bangkok or whatever lah. You listed some places like Thailand, and Sweden and whatever. What are some of the interesting or rather places that you can share a little bit more about? That is, or rather, where exactly in that country do you go and what are your experiences?
Okay, interesting meaning to say like...
Not regular. Generally people go to Bangkok and then they go to like Pratunam or something in shopping, right? I'm sure that's not where you go in Thailand. So like whereabouts?
Where did I go in Thailand? Actually, for Thailand, I've been to Bangkok. I didn't really explore that much of Thailand specifically. If you talk about more unusual places, I think it was the travel to African continent. So it's unusual because I usually travel alone, and it was the only place that I didn't travel alone.
Okay.
It's the only place that I traveled half alone and half with a group of people. But it was also the place where I traveled without staying in a hotel/hostel for the longest time. So we actually camped out for about 30 days or more.
30 days.
Yeah, so I never slept on a bed for 30 days.
Nice.
We traveled from South Africa up to Botswana, Malawi, and then up to Zimbabwe, Zambia, etc.
Wow. Okay, so I mean, generally, apart from you traveling solo and all of that, you essentially seek out interesting places to go right? Usually, Singaporeans or people when they travel, they take leave or during holiday, they want to go to places that allow them to, I guess, indulge or relax, right? Like a lot of people go to places like Japan, Korea, Bali, Thailand type of places to just go for massage, shopping and stuff like that, right? So, but you don't do that. Not really.
Yeah.
So what do you actually do when you travel apart from camping out for like 30 days?
What do I do? When I tell my friends, right, they will say I'm torturing myself, but I don't think so. So what do I do? So I think I was trying to travel as cheaply as I can. So to give some context, I was a student then. So it's not like I didn't have a lot of money, but relative to how much I want to travel to the places I want to go, I didn't have a lot of money. So I did it as cheaply as I can. So there are many times where I don't even book a hostel because I deem the hostel, which is $5 a night, too expensive.
Wow.
So I'm like, no, it's okay. I can just sleep at like the bus stop or like the train station, etc., which I've done many times. Interesting experiences.
I'm sure.
And then, so in terms of indulgence, right, I don't indulge in food and things like that. So when I travel, I think the first thing I'll do is I go to a supermarket, right? And then if they have like a huge loaf of bread, I just buy the huge loaf of bread and it's going to last me like for some time. But I think my indulgence come in the adventure or the thrill of things. So I don't think that I wasn't indulgent. In fact, I was very indulgent in that way. Like I literally would do anything to get new experiences and to try new things. So, where am I leading with that?
I mean, yeah. So like, what do you do? Apart from sleeping at a bus stop with a loaf of bread, what do you do when you travel? Like, what are some of the stuff that you things that you generally look out for? Because like just now we mentioned that for most people they indulge go onsen, massage or whatever, and that's not what you seek. So what are you usually some people like to go overseas to skydive and whatever, right? So what kind of adventures do you usually seek when you travel?
Actually, I don't think I seek a particular adventure. I think I'm just so open to anything that arises. So if anything arises, right, I'll just say yes. But yeah, like in terms of skydiving, paragliding and things like that, like the thrill seeking stuff, like definitely if the opportunity arises, I will go for it. So, got a little story about my first paragliding experience. I was somewhere in Turkey. I think I'm near a place called Pamukkale. So during that time, it was like after some conflict around Syria and things like that. So it was a bit unstable. So then Turkey was like kind of like a bit of a dangerous place. And then people were like, don't go. Then I was like, wow, cheap, let's go. So I bought my ticket there. And then what happened? Okay, so I reached this area. I think it's Pamukkale, but I can't really remember. And then I was So I was so poor back then, or I was so unwilling to spend that I would literally walk the distance instead of taking any transport. So like, as long as it is under 10 kilometers, I deem it walkable. And I'll be like, never mind, along the way when you walk, right, you will still see some sights and some experiences, which I have many. And I count that as part of my adventure. So I was walking to my hostel actually, but I reached the train station pretty early. So maybe around like 6 a.m. or something, but sun is up already. So then I started my walk. And then somehow I was walking into this like slightly more hilly area. And then there's this van, right, that just drove up to me. And by the way, it's like super quiet over there because it's, I think, near a touristy spot already. But during that time, it was very off-season also.
Right.
And people didn't really want to go to Turkey. So then this van just drove up to me, and then the guy, right, was like, he opened the door, like really, he just drove up beside me, opened the door. Then after that, I was like, then he was like, I don't know what he said, something like, hello. And then he was just like, do you want a tour? And I was a backpacker then, yes. So I said no.
I said no because just now you said you were about saying yes.
Wait, haven't yet. So I said no, I don't want a tour. I'm just gonna walk. And then I was like, maybe this guy gonna offer me a drive and then like ask me to pay money or something. Then I'm just like, nah, I don't want. So I was like, I just rather use my legs. So then after that later he asked me, oh, do you want to go for paragliding? And then I was like, oh, cool. At the point of time, I haven't tried before. So it caught my attention. So I was like, okay, sure. How much? And then after that, this guy was like, I think he charged me like 40 euros, which is actually quite cheap for paragliding. So after that, I think he said 40 or somewhere along those lines. And then I was like, my brain was like, yes. Then I was like, okay. But I like at the point of time, I didn't even think that it was a very weird context how I met. Like literally this van just drove up to me and asked me about tour and whether I want to paraglide. So I was just like, okay, sure. 10. Then, so I just hopped onto his van and before I went to the hostel. Then after that, he drove me up this like mountain, not really mountain, maybe it's just a hill, not really a mountain. Okay. And then in like the next 10 minutes, right, I was like strapped up in a harness. And then after that, I was like running off the mountain and then jumping off already. Then, but I mean, all turns out well, I'm here today. So,
usually, right, stories that start with you're walking alone on the road in a ulu place with a van driving up to you, someone saying hello, generally don't end well, right? Stories like that generally don't end well. So I guess, these things I'm sure, happen a lot when you're traveling, whether it's in Turkey or, other places. Like you find yourself in situations where you just say yes to the possibility of it going very well or very terribly.
Yeah.
So has there ever been a situation where you felt like your life is in danger, like your life, literally your life is being threatened, not in the I'm jumping off a mountain way, but in the I might die here kind of way?
Die. Okay, I think my concept of death was very different back then. So in a sense that why I could do all these things, right, and like be a crazy woman, is because I think during then I genuinely didn't fear death. So I don't think death was the experience that I was most afraid of.
Okay.
Yeah, in a sense. So I think at that point of time I held a lot of like unworthiness. So to me, even if I die trying, right, it's worth it. Like my life was worth less than that. And actually the being not afraid to die is actually very powerful. Because when you're not afraid to die, you can do literally anything. Although in a larger scope of things, it might be something very irresponsible, right? Because some people would think like, wow, you're so brave, do these kind of things and all that, right? But honestly, I think it stems from the fact that how powerful it is to not value your life in a very warped way. Yeah. So if I would talk about my scariest experience, I think it's more on violation of my boundaries and respect and things like that. Right. So like, it's worse than dying. Yeah. So I don't know whether I need to give some trigger warning. So
okay, trigger warning. Trigger warning. Please.
Yeah. So there are teams of I didn't get raped, but there are teams of molestation. So one fine day. Anyway, I'm just going to say it like probably a little bit more casual than the weight of the subject, but to people who are listening, it is a serious matter. But I can talk about it like this today because I have processed it for a while. So, yes, one fine day, I was in Uzbekistan.
Again, where is that?
Uzbekistan.
Where exactly is that?
It's next to Kazakhstan. Is that helpful?
Okay, never mind. Okay, tell your story.
Okay, go Google it. Yeah. And then so again I was like arriving at this train station. It was pretty cold that day. And then I think I arrived around like 4 a.m. So I had the mind to wait at the train station until sun is up. I won't go out when it's really dark. So then I went, I know my next destination, I needed to take a bus, which I wasn't too familiar with the bus system. So, okay, this comes in a little bit in a story. So I went around, like, because I do hitchhike in my travels also.
You do?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
So it isn't something abnormal to me at that point of time. So I went around, like, not everyone could really speak English, but then there was this guy who's like, he looks friendly and stuff like that. So I was like, okay. And then he was like, yeah, I can take you to the next village. Anyway, it's like on my way there and stuff like that. I was like, great. And then, but he did ask for a small fee, which to me, it's fine, you are going to bring me there anyway. So, I remember I just sat in his car. His car like super small. I don't know which model, but it's really small. Okay. And I didn't take out my backpack during then. So I sat at the back and then it's like, I'm like super squished. Like I cannot really move kind of thing. Then, what happened? Oh yes. Then after that, I think I remember along the way, right, he still tell me, oh, I'm actually a part-time police officer. And I remember he showed me his badge all, Then I was like, oh yeah, okay. Then I don't know why I never sus anything. Like, how come you even volunteer this information to me? Right? So I never sus anything. I was like, oh, okay, great. Then after I still asked him about the bus timing, everything. Then he was like, super helpful. Then after that, we were driving. And because I was traveling to the next, town? Kind of like town. So like the population in Uzbekistan is pretty sparse. So there's like a long deserted road before the next town. So we were on that long deserted road. And then after that, I was just minding my own business. Then he suddenly, like we were sitting kind of diagonally. So he suddenly turned behind and then he grabbed my skirt. Because then that place is more conservative, so I was wearing actually a long skirt and then he grabbed my skirt, like it was a wrap skirt. Then he tried to open my skirt from the front, and all the while he was still driving at the same time. And then of course I got very shocked. So then after that I was like, okay, and then I pull back I tried to close, right? So then after that he was like pulling so hard. I remember my skirt actually tore. Then I was like trying to punch him, trying to like get him away but I couldn't really move because my backpack is like right behind me also.
Right.
Then the exchange wasn't that long. Yeah, but eventually he actually crashed. Yeah, so
He crashed the car.
Yeah, he crashed his car. It wasn't a very, very bad crash. Yeah, in my history of being in car crashes,
Okay.
I have been in more than one.
Okay.
So
of course. Okay.
yeah, so then so his car crashed and then he got a shock and then he kind of stopped the car a little bit, and then that was when I actually managed to get out lah. So I think the lucky part is the door was somehow not locked, or maybe I don't know lah. Maybe you crashed and you jerked the car lock or something. I don't know. It's one of those like manual kind of lock.
Right.
Then after I managed to get out lah. Then I remember I was like kind of in the adrenaline of the moment. I was like angry. So I remember I slammed the car door the other way around. So like not to close the door, but the other way around, and like so anyway, the door was left hanging lah. And then lucky also, he decided to like sped away lah. He sped away. So I think in those moments, I didn't really feel that much. But after that, right, okay, so I was in the middle of the deserted road lah, nowhere. So anyway, to conclude that, right, I had to walk lah to my next journey. But the good thing is, because it's quite deserted, right, there's only one road, so you cannot really get lost. You just need to keep walking. So
how long did you walk?
It's not that long, maybe like 40 minutes. Yeah. So yeah, but I remember like I was walking, then very quiet. Then I suddenly just started crying a lot. Like I don't think like I was in the objective point of view, I wasn't like molested. I wasn't really raped. I mean, the places he touched was, I mean, on my inner thighs, but it's not like at the privates where it really, really matter. But
Right.
I think I felt very violated, like obviously without consent and all those things. So yeah, and I was like crying all the way like to my walk to the next destination. And yeah, so if you ask me, the experience that was the most hard-hitting to me in a bad way, I think that was one.
Right.
Near death or not, I don't think I considered that as near death experience, but I mean, he could have drove me over, I guess, but he didn't lah. So
Like it's emotionally very traumatic lah. It leaves a little bit of a scar.
leave a little bit of scar.
So, I mean, you have obviously, I mean, just from this situation alone, you have obviously been in multiple situations where your life could be in danger, right? And not just that, but certain situations can leave you, very emotionally traumatized for a long time lah. And like thankfully for you, you have managed to kind of process it, like you said, you managed to kind of work with it and deal with it lah, and kind of come out stronger, or however way someone else might put it. But so I guess the question is, knowing that you're traveling alone as a female to some of these places that might not be very populated, or might be quite deserted, right? Why do you do it? Because I mean, we'll get back to the part where you talk about, how you view death and whatever, right? But apart from, having that courage lah, and having, seeing that death is not something that you put at the forefront of your life at that point in time, why do you do it? Why do you seek experiences or adventures like that could possibly not just get you killed, right? But put you in situations where could leave you scarred for the rest of your life?
I think my very first travel started because of a breakup, like my first solo travel. However, I think like the reason why I continued traveling like extended way beyond that lah. That was just like one of the trips. Honestly, when you ask the question, right, I'm not really sure why. Because the first thing that came to mind is just that I never think so much. So then the question is, how come I never think so much? Usually people, this kind of situation, they will think a lot, right? So,
yeah.
So, I think there was a little bit of like gaining more experience, having more stories. The funniest thing, I don't usually tell a lot of my stories, but like having more stories, and like maybe there was a lot about like the search and the adventure that I enjoyed, or like the new thing that came about. Maybe in a very warped way, when I feel like I could survive different situations, right? Then after that, I'll feel like like I was strong, or like
right.
in a way to confirm my own independence and my strength. Maybe that, I don't know, that's something that just popped up to me. So actually, I think consciously I didn't really know why I was traveling. And during that period of time, I really couldn't see myself. So I didn't even think that when I was traveling, I was like very crazy, until I like sometimes tell my friend the story. Then they're like, you siao. Then after that, I'm like, hey, really, man? Like,
right.
What you mean, really, man?
When things are put into perspective for you, then maybe you see that, maybe you were being a bit crazy more than the usual. I mean, we're all crazy in our own ways, right? But a bit more than the usual average Joe on the street
Yeah, man.
Right?
Yeah.
So you talk about searching and stuff, and maybe traveling was a way to prove to yourself that you are independent, you are strong, and maybe you are the person that you hope you can be, or whatever. So after traveling for a while to so many places, and putting yourselves into potentially life-threatening situations and all that, what did you find? Did you find what you were searching for?
I find that this came, I think, really right at the end. COVID did spark that. I think I find that I actually don't need to travel anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think traveling in that search, right? Like I didn't have a why, but during my travel, maybe the why was trying to find my why, and like when I ask myself, why do I really need all this experience? I think maybe it really stemmed from the fact that I didn't believe I was enough, or I didn't think that I had enough experiences, enough stories, enough whatever, right? But in the search, right, I never ever thought what I already have and whether that was enough or not. I think what I discovered, that's a deep question.
It is. I mean, you don't have to answer it with a specific, point, but
trying to think.
Like you said, at some point you decided that you don't need to travel anymore. You if you travel, you want to travel, right? Kind of, but you don't find the need to seek that kind of, can I call it adrenaline, or kind of seek that kind of self validation type thing, So I guess what is the thing that, or like the turning point that you decided that I was searching, and I arrived at this point where I feel like there's no need to do this anymore?
I think it came from starting my job proper also, because like all these adventures I have, right? I think at the end of the day, sometimes I feel like, it was all like great, and honestly, it's great. I did learn a lot of things about myself and the world and the spectrum of humans and things like that. But like, then what other purpose is it than an adventure of my own? Right. So ultimately, I think I realized that I really want to find a place to settle. It doesn't need to be like for life or anything, but to settle a little bit so that I can contribute to the world around me. Like my life isn't just meant to be an adventure for myself. Right. But like, what do I do then with these things that I have learned already as part of my adventure? I mean, it might not even be like sharing my stories or things like that, because it would distill down into like my being, of who I am today. So even in teaching today, like, obviously staying in Singapore, teaching in schools and things like that, I think it like bleeds and ebbs through my being.
Right.
And I think I find more fulfillment in that. And so it's realizing that I want to stay somewhere so that I can contribute.
Right. So did you feel like this journey of traveling alone and like learning stuff and has kind of helped you process or deal with those emotions that made you want to travel in the first place? Like a lot of, like what you said, like self-loathing, maybe a lot of maybe insecurities about who you are as a person and all of that. Did this process of self-discovery help you kind of process that, come to terms with that, which is why today you are able to be a teacher and find this anchor, or this place where you feel like you can belong and contribute?
I think during the time where I was traveling, right, in general, during that period of time in my life, I think I was actually very emotionally dissociated. So like I didn't really feel like, oh, I hated myself and stuff like that. It was all very like at the back of my mind, like I could conceptually probably think about it, but I was very detached from my emotions. So it's also really because I keep seeking for the high, like, oh, I want to feel like I exist in this life. I want to feel like I have felt something in my life, whether it's adrenaline, excitement, fear, or anything, right? But the thing is that I keep running away from my emotion. So I don't actually like viscerally feel it. And then I will go and look for the next thing, right? Like, oh, what's the next high? Right. So I think that was a funny thing. Sorry, your question again. I said all this to answer your question, but I forgot your question.
Okay, no problem. So essentially, has your journey, just self-traveling, whatever, yes. You kind of started doing that because you were motivated by like some insecurities and self-loathing and whatever. And after the entire process of doing this, you realize that I don't need to do this anymore. And what did you get out of it?
I feel like in all my times of travel, right, maybe it just added experiences, yes, but a lot of layers of trauma actually, which I didn't actually really process during my time then. But coming back home here and like being still for a while, like allowed me to process that. So maybe they provided me the bank of experiences I require in order for future processing. So I think maybe one thread is about connection. Like I seek so many connection externally to have all these events and stuff, whatever. Then but I think only to then learn that what I was missing out was a connection with myself. And without the connection to myself, I will keep seeking that connection and adventure outside because I never felt it within myself. So I think on hindsight, that is maybe one of the things that I learned.
So would you say that without this couple of years of traveling alone and whatnot, you might not have arrived at this thing which is that you know that you are seeking, you don't exactly know where you're seeking, and at the end of it you kind of find that actually what you really needed was to find that connection with yourself rather than with external events, experiences, or people.
Yeah, I think definitely that might not arise if I didn't travel. Maybe specifically for myself, because I think I'm someone who really need to experience things. Like if you tell me about something, I will like, okay, sure, but I don't really believe you. So until I experience it for myself. So yeah, I guess, yeah.
Okay, so I mean, would you, in hindsight, right, knowing what you know today, would you do this again if you were in the place that you were in at that point?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And I mean, it's still a large part of who I am today. Like, I wouldn't be who I am today if I didn't travel. I think one of the things I learned is also the spectrum of human beings that exists.
Right.
And actually knowing the whole spectrum of human being that exists actually makes me a kinder person, not a meaner person. And being able, like the more I travel, the more I can trust people actually, even though I have both negative and positive experiences. Like I think it allows me to understand beyond the traditional binaries or categories we place people in, because there were times, right, of course, like I'm like just sleeping in the streets. So like I met people who were very poor, who stink, who like homeless people and physically, maybe some people would think very repulsively of them. But honestly, sometimes they are the kindest people ever. And like with what little they have, they might still help you. So, but sometimes when people have a lot, they can choose not to want to help you, even if it's well within their capacity. So I think it allows me to understand how we can see people for who they are without the categories that might be ascribed to them. Because really, the categories doesn't matter. Yeah, I think that's something else that I learned. So I think it does add through how I view my students today, how I view other people today.
So it's some empathy there, and also to, I guess, learn how to embrace and not judge before you interact or you connect with somebody, right? And there are, I guess, many people out there, whether they are from Singapore or not anywhere in the world, maybe they are also, many people are seeking. I mean, even for me, anybody, we are always seeking, we're always finding our path, our journey or whatever. And I think maybe traveling is a way where people feel like they can start finding themselves, especially traveling solo. Would you have anything to share, with people who might be looking to do this, traveling solo, especially as a female, not to like gender stereotype here, but generally, like even for me, like I'm male and stuff. I don't even dare to do this because I'm so like small and I basically look like a kid. Even though I'm almost 30, and it's tough to go to some places and feel like you might not be able to get out of situations you put yourself in, right? So would you have any, I don't know, tips or advice for people who might be seeking and traveling and putting themselves into situations that might be difficult to get out of, what they should look out for?
What they should look out for? I think first of all, know your. I think this comes from my learning experiences. So I think first of all, know your responsibilities and commitments at home. Because I think a huge part of me felt very selfish for just going on to travel and things like that. Of course, my parents are worried and I've made them worry. I think during that time, that was a bit selfish of me. And so know your responsibilities and commitment, which, maybe a part of it is why I don't travel as much or as crazily. I think the old me would have said, know your intention of why you're doing this. It's never wrong or right to do it, but know your intention. But looking back, I actually didn't know my intention. So, but it still turned out fruitful for me. And I think there were many times that I was lucky. So, maybe if you could think about the intention and it comes up to you, then great, amazing. But if it doesn't, then I would say go with where you honestly feel pulled to. And if you feel the curiosity, then to me, go ahead, right? And know what you can lose and what you can't lose. For example, maybe you want to take a sabbatical, you can lose that time, or you can lose a promotion. You can maybe delay your study 1 year or things like that. Those are things you can lose. But what are the things you cannot lose? I mean, some are intangible. Like maybe for me is my respect for my body, or maybe family members, the things that I don't want to compromise. And I mean, there are many of the other things that are, the safety stuff and all that. Yeah, of course, like as a solo female foreign poor backpacker, you are prime target number 1.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
So,
so what have you maybe learned or experienced that some people they still want to go out there, find themselves, put themselves into situations, and what have you maybe learned that you should do or not do like maybe not get into a stranger's car, with shady, I don't know, based on your experience.
I think there are a lot of these tips and tricks, like safety things that can be Googled online. Like even, wearing a fake engagement ring to like show that, or like wedding ring, so that, you can always say, oh, actually my husband is just around the corner or something. These kind of things, really sure it's Googleable. But honestly, really one thing I learned about when traveling, there's no right and wrong. There is only whether you are aware and can bear the consequence or not. And the consequence to other people around you, especially those that you love and matter, whether you can bear that consequence. And there is always a choice. So I think it's more about knowing your capacity, how far you want to go. And of course, you can read all these tips and tricks online. It can help you. It can protect you in some ways. Like whether to go into a stranger's car or not. Honestly, I have many good experiences. In a way that there are those that, the car already full, like 5-seater car, right? Got 5 people inside, still got 1 + 1 dog, right? But then they will, like when I hitchhiking, they will really make way and space for me to like squeeze in, And sometimes I just wonder why. But I just think maybe it's just kindness in that moment, and they ask nothing in return. So I don't think there's a right and wrong, but also trust your intuition in some ways. Yeah, I do think that has gotten me pretty far, although I have been in nasty situations as well. But
Right.
yeah, trust your intuition. And really there isn't a wrong or right. And I really want to say like, also it might lead you to more danger, but just be open to experiences, because after all, why do you travel? You don't travel. I mean, sure, of course, if you are going with the route of like comfort and things like that, you know, you have something in plan,
Right.
you know where you want to go and get your food and stuff like that. That's great, amazing. But again, the intention, right? If you're talking about like you want to like have adventure, being a solo backpacker or something like that, then I would assume that's not the intention. So be open to experiences, and I think have faith in humans still lah. Although, yeah.
Although sometimes it can be tough too lah. I mean,
yeah, sometimes it can be tough.
Based on your experience alone, you know, you came out a certain way. You found a lot of growth emotionally and you know, and all that, and which culminated into the person you are today lah. But it is also very possible that you could have come out a completely different way, right?
Could have been in a coffin.
I mean, okay, apart from being physically dead, right? I mean, if you were lucky enough to survive as you did, you know, you could have that the emotional growth might not have happened the way that it happened for you, right? You could have completely lost faith in humanity and, you know, like focused on these nasty experiences rather than the more pleasant ones that you've had lah. So what I guess this is a weird question to ask, but what did you do, or what was your mindset, you know, when you were dealing with all these experiences, good or bad, that you think made you or allowed you to come out as a better person in your eyes?
I think I mean, we cannot control how people are or who they want to be or what they do. The only thing I can control is me. So then looking at the huge spectrum of humanity, right? And I mean, I can control how I respond to them. I cannot control what they do. So then I think about who do I want to be? Who do I want to be while responding to people? I have met the black sheeps, right? And of course, many white sheeps too. So do I want to treat everybody when I don't know them and like I first meet them? Do I want to treat them as a black sheep? And like, you know, hold that sense of suspicion, like, well, do I want to trust this person? I should like, you know, distance myself and things like that. Or like, because they look a certain way and then give them a suspicious eye. Do I want to do that? Or do I want to treat them and believe that they can be like, I mean, good in any way of that word, reasonable human beings in the first time I want to meet them? So, I mean, for me, I chose the choice that I want to choose to trust first lah. And I want to choose to, how I want to respond to somebody that I just meet for the first time is in a way that I want to believe in the good in them lah. So, but of course, when there are turn of events, then I also trust myself to be able to respond and survive. So there's a huge trust on myself also, that I know what to do when things come to shits. And in the event where I can't trust other people or I meet the black sheeps, then I know what to do lah. So, yeah, look, I think what made my answer is knowing who I want to be and knowing that seeing a few black sheeps doesn't mean I need to treat everyone like one. Yeah.
So it's very internal. Like it's rarely, even now, like after all your experiences, it's rarely about the people or the environment, but it's about going back to that connection that you have with yourself and the person you want to be, the person you hope to be, and the person that you hope to, you know, that you hope to project into the world, so that you can, I guess, you know, like bring some value into the world wherever you go, right? And I think that's very powerful. And it's not everybody who seeks ends up with this perspective, right? There are some people who ends up with a very, you know, bitter kind of perspective, and you know, they hate the world and all that. But you manage to kind of seek and question and process and come out, I would say, on top in a sense, where you manage to kind of find a relationship with yourself, which which kind of forms the core of the person you are today, which is great, right? So that being said, you know, I also want to ask you and chat with you about the thing that you said just now, which is that in the beginning you were kind of detached and you didn't view death as something that is very important, right? And like this seeking or whatever you were doing is more valuable to you than your own life even, and at that time. Has this newfound connection and relationship that you have with yourself changed that perspective? Do you value your life more now? Do you see it differently as, how you viewed it at that time in your life?
Okay, before I address that question, right, just now when you're speaking about sometimes people may come out as a nasty experience, like, I will never trust another person again in my life, which is highly possible and honestly reasonable and understandable, right? Considering what you might have gone through, right? But then I think no matter what the case, right, you also find a relationship with yourself and the external world, even if it is a negative one, like, I'm never going to trust somebody again. But this also goes to show, right, two persons can experience the same thing, but come out with two different perspectives. So then again, the question isn't about the world, but the question is, what is it within you that allows you to, or that made you make the conclusion that I'm never going to trust anyone again? Like, what is it about you? Or maybe there's a little bit of a lesson there to learn also, right? That to conclude in this way. So because it's about you really, it's not about the world, because it's how we subjectively perceive.
Correct.
With regards to the question about death, as oddly as I might say it, I think there was an easy way out, right? Not being valuing my life in a certain way. Has all these experiences changed me? Let me think.
Or rather, not change you, but you view, it has evidently changed you, but like just purely on the perspective of how you view death. Has it changed?
Okay, there are two things that popped up to my mind. So death in the perspective of like a psychological death or like an identity death, like more like an ego death, versus a physical death, like you like lose your physical body as a vessel when you die. So I think my concept of death in terms of like changing my perspective of things and like certain ideas and concepts that I hold in my mind so tightly, right? Like I consider it a death when I really let that go and it changes me as a person, like who I am changes. So I do think that aspect of death after I travel and what I've learned is really very flexible and malleable now. So like, I think maybe easier for me to let go of many things that don't serve me or serve me once, and I can accept that it no longer serves me anymore. In terms of physical death, I think it comes when I appreciate responsibility a lot more. Like, I guess it's again now back to the story whereby a lot of people can think, well, you're so daring, right? But honestly, it was also because I wasn't attached to the responsibility here in Singapore. And maybe that is what I really feared then. And
the responsibility?
Yeah. Because you have something to lose when you're attached to something, right?
Yes.
And you're responsible and you're committed to something. And something is actually important to you, then you're like, oh shit, I can lose it, right? So I think maybe that was something I learned, and why I treasure my life a little bit more now is because you can see there's a lack of freedom now because of all these responsibilities, but these responsibilities and commitments, right, they are not a bad thing. I do feel heavier with them, but they are not a bad thing because I have chosen them. I know these are what I want and to be responsible for, and it actually adds value to my life. Yeah, so then in that way, I'm like, I cannot die so easily, right? So
yeah, I think that's very valid. And I think many people who might have, maybe this is one of the reasons why you came out, seeing everything with more empathy, with more positive light, because these things, so-called responsibilities or relationships that you have chosen, have brought value to your life. And maybe they do, feel a little bit heavy, burdensome even at times, but because you know how much you value these things and how much value these things also bring to your life, you feel like there is actually something to lose here, right? Compared to last time where you just didn't want to take on any of these responsibilities, so there's nothing to lose lah. So it's like, like physical death or like psychological ego death, it's like like, so be it, right? But now that you have built a life that hopefully is what the direction that you want to move towards. There's some things, whether it's relationships or your job, your work, that you actually value. It naturally adds value to life, and without this physical body, so-called vessel in your words, you are unable to enjoy this value or give back this value into the world as well.
Yeah, I like what you talk about giving back that value also. Like I think hanging on to the idea of me being unworthy, right, at the beginning and stuff like that, I always like don't believe in the value I can add to people's life or the value I can bring to this world, right? I think understanding that is like, and being responsible to that is knowing that I can provide value, and what would happen if, like, I suddenly die and things like that, right? So I think, that there is both receiving of value and giving of value, and they are both as equally important. No?
For sure, yeah. Because if you don't possess value, you don't think you have things that are valuable to you, it would be very difficult to be a person who provides value also, because you don't view yourself as somebody with value. So how can you give value into the world, right? But now that you have identified some of these things that you treasure, the value that you have in your life, you are able to have the headspace to see how you can add value, whether it's to your students, whether it's to the people that you meet, even like, us talking about these things, and people who might be listening to your experiences. Maybe hopefully they have some takeaways, learn something about what it means to find yourself, have that connection with yourself, and really value not just your physical vessel, your physical body, but value your values, value your, the relationships, the things that you might have that might sometimes be perceived as burdensome. But if you can, just bring yourself out and see things from a more macro perspective, there's a lot of value to be had, and there's a lot of value to be given. Do you think so?
Yeah, I do think so. I think a lot of times we don't really know where our value lies, right? And when we don't know where our value lies is when we keep seeking the external validation. Hey, somebody need to tell me that I did well here, or I'm seeking for somebody to tell me I did a good job. Right. So I think a lot about it, like owning up to your own value, allows us to value add to the world. So I really completely agree with that. And I think on the note of finding ourselves, right, I think it's to also understand what expectation we have with regards to that. Like, do you mean finding yourself that you need a fixed answer? This is who I am. You know, I have a fixed answer. So I think travel might not give you that. So but I think what I learned is that I don't need that fixed answer of who I am, but I just need to conduct my actions in alignment to what I believe for myself, and it will naturally come along the way. And it will change along the way, right? Who I am as a person, whatever. So it's to come to a clarity and certainty, even despite the flexibility of the answer. Because I think the fixed answer is... maybe for some people it's possible, but I think it's quite hard to arrive at. And if you are holding on to that expectation that travel needs to get this for me, then you'll continue the search forever. Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for coming in today and sharing your experiences, even though it can be vulnerable at times. And thank you for being so willing to share. And I hope you continue to find value and add value to the world. And I hope that the people listening to this podcast can also consider some of the things that we discussed today and find that connection with themselves rather than externally. Thank you, Ming Min. It was an amazing conversation.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next time. Peace.
Try peace too.